You know, I was standing in my hallway this morning looking at that pile of shoes by the door.
Hmm.
There's running shoes, dress shoes, beat up sneakers. For most of us, picking a pair is just, it's a fashion choice.
Or what the weather's like.
Exactly. We slide our feet in, tie the laces, and we just go. We don't really think about the mechanics of it. But looking at this research you brought in, for millions of people, that simple act is a massive engineering challenge.
It really is. And it's a challenge where the stakes are just incredibly high.
Yeah.
We tend to think of rehabilitation as something that happens, you know, in a hospital
Right, your clinical set.
or on parallel bars in a PT gym.
Yeah.
But the sources we're analyzing today, they suggest that for people with mobility issues, the real battle often happens somewhere much more mundane
And frustrating.
and frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah.
The shoe store.
That is the hook that really grabbed me. This idea that a prescription for a brace, an ankle-foot orthosis or AFO is really just phase one.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the most advanced, custom-molded carbon fiber brace in the world, but if you put it inside the wrong shoe, you might be making things worse.
Oh, you absolutely can be. It's what the literature calls the Cinderella problem.
Cinderella problem. I love that the medical community uses that.
Well, it fits perfectly, doesn't it? You have these standard shoes designed for a standard anatomical foot.
Right.
But then you have a patient wearing an orthotic that just radically changes the shape, the volume, the whole mechanics of their limb.
So you're trying to force it in.
You're trying to force one into the other without a plan. And it isn't just uncomfortable. It's like biomechanically counterproductive. It's the square peg in a round hole.
Except the square peg is your leg, and the round hole is a really expensive sneaker.
Exactly.
And the data on this, it's kind of heartbreaking. I was looking at one of the studies in our stack, and it followed 100 people advised to use an AFO.
And these are people who need them.
They need them to walk safely to prevent falls. And yet at the follow-up, the drop-off rate was just staggering. Only 59 were still using them.
59%. So nearly half of the people just gave up on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a massive failure rate for a medical intervention. Imagine if 40% of people just stopped taking their heart medication because the bottle was too hard to open.
That was a great analogy. And the primary reason they gave wasn't that the brace didn't work.
Yeah.
Shoe incompatibility and comfort. They literally couldn't find a way to wear it that didn't hurt.
So our mission today really is to shift that perspective. We need to help you stop seeing shoes as just coverings.
Or fashion.
Yeah.
And start seeing them as the ground interface of a complex machine.
And that machine actually has a clinical name, the AFOFC.
Let's unpack that. AFOFC. It sounds like a soccer club.
It does. It stands for ankle-foot orthosis footwear combination.
Okay.
The whole concept is that you cannot treat the brace and the shoe as separate things. It's not a sandwich. It's a single integrated system.
And the key insight there is that the shoe, it determines the final orientation of the ground reaction force vector.
That's it, the ground reaction force.
Okay. I remember that term from high school physics, but it sounds a lot more intense when we're talking about walking to the grocery store. Why does that matter so much?
Well, think about Newton's third law. You step on the ground pushes back.
Equal and opposite reaction.
That pushback is the ground reaction force. It's like an invisible arrow shooting up from the floor through your leg, and the angle of that arrow dictates the forces on your ankle, your knee, even your hip.
So if the shoe is wrong,
If the shoe is wrong, the heel's too soft or too high, that force vector is misaligned. Suddenly, that arrow isn't going through the safe center of your knee, it's pushing it backward or twisting it. The patient is literally fighting their own equipment.
okay, so before we even get to the physics of vectors and invisible arrows, we have to talk about just fitting.
Volumetric accommodation.
Volumetric accommodation. Because these braces plastic, carbon fiber, the leather ones we'll get to, they aren't thin, they add serious bulk.
They do. A brace adds girth. It completely changes the cross-section of the foot. It raises the instep. It widens the heel.
And standard shoes just aren't built for that.
Not at all. They're built for a foot, maybe a sock. Not a foot, a sock, and 4 millimeters of rigid plastic. The guidelines we're looking at recommend extra depth or even double depth shoes.
And we're not talking about a tiny bit more room here. The sources specify a vertical increase of roughly 5 millimeters? All the way up to over a half-inch of extra space.
Which is massive in footwear design.
Yeah.
A half inch is the difference between a slipper and a boot.
And if you don't have that depth,
You get dorsal pressure.
dorsal pressure. Sounds polite, but it's really not.
No, it's painful. It means the top of the shoe is just pressing down hard on the top of the foot. The brace, pushes the foot up, the shoe pushes it down, it forces the toes to curl.
Into that claw shape.
Yeah, which leads to hammer toes, calluses, or in diabetic patients, really dangerous ulcers.
It's the classic sardine can effect. But speaking of squishing toes, let's talk about the shape of the toe box, because fashion seems to be the enemy here.
It really is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Modern fashion has favored that tapered, pointed toe for decades. It looks sleek, but
But if you're in a rigid brace, your foot can't conform to that shape.
not at all. A normal foot can squish a little. A braced foot is locked in place. There's zero wiggle room.
Zero.
And the sources highlight these university studies where they put pressure sensors inside the shoe. Pointed toe boxes just skyrocket the pressure on the medial forefoot.
So your big toe joint is basically taking all that crushing force.
Precisely. And that's pain, it's inflammation. All the data supports square or rounded toe boxes. You need that geometric volume for natural toes play,
Even in a brace.
especially in a brace.
Yeah.
Your toes play a huge role in balance. They grip, they adjust. If you cramp them, you lose that stability.
Okay, so we need a deep shoe with a square toe. That makes sense intuitively. But this is where the research gets really interesting, this concept of tuning.
This is the biomechanical heart of the whole issue. This is where we go from just fitting the shoe to actually optimizing how someone walks.
We need to talk about the shank to vertical angle, or SVA.
The SVA.
I
Yeah.
have to admit, I never thought I'd be fascinated by the angle of a shin bone, but the way the sources describe it, it's like tuning a race car.
It really is. It's all about alignment. So think about a rigid AFO. It usually holds the ankle at a fixed angle, maybe 90 degrees.
So the ankle joint's effectively frozen.
It's frozen. So if the ankle can't move to adjust your balance, how do you change the angle of your leg relative to the ground?
You change the thing touching the ground, the
What-
shoe.
Exactly. The shoe becomes the tuning instrument. You put that brace in a shoe with a high heel, it tilts the shin forward. A low heel tilts it back.
And the sources describe this stiff knee gait. So if the shoe tilts the leg back too far, the knee just locks up.
Right. It creates what's called an extension moment at the knee. It snacks back, hyperextends. The patient feels like they're falling backward. It's incredibly unstable.
But if you tune it right...
The results are unbelievable.
Okay, I want to drill down on this one case study because the numbers are just wild. A patient with post-stroke hemiplegia.
So paralysis on one side.
They adjusted the SVA from 15 degrees down to 12 degrees, just 3 degrees.
A tiny adjustment. And they did it just by shaving some material off the heel of the shoe.
And listen to this. The patient's non-dimensional velocity, which is a fancy way of measuring walking speed, jumped from 0.09 to 0.24.
Wow.
But more tangibly, their stride length nearly doubled. They went from taking these hesitant 45-centimeter steps to confident 76-centimeter strides.
Just from changing the angle of the shoe.
It feels like magic. How does 3 degrees of tilt do that?
It's engineering. When the angle's wrong, the patient is fighting the brace to move forward. It's like walking uphill all the time. When the angle is right, the brace helps them roll over their foot. It restores the rocker function that the ankle usually provides. Suddenly, momentum is working for them, not against them.
So we have the fit, we have the angle. Let's talk materials. Friction and foam. Because I think most people assume if you have foot pain, you want walking on clouds.
Oh yeah, the softest, squishiest marshmallow shoe you can find.
But that's a huge misconception for AFO users.
It's actually incorrect, yes.
Why? Why is cloud-like bad if your feet hurt?
It comes down to somatosensory feedback and stability. The sources describe a thick, soft midsole as insulating you from the ground.
You can't feel the floor?
You can't feel the floor to know where you are in space. And if you already have balance issues or neuropathy, a mushy shoe just increases sway.
It's like walking on a firm floor versus walking across a bouncy mattress.
That's the perfect image. If you're on a mattress, your ankles are working overtime to stabilize you. With a brace, that motion gets transferred up to your knee and hip. You just wobble more.
So we want firm foam. What about the bottom, the outsole? We need a Goldilocks zone of friction.
Right. The friction coefficient, mu. Too low, too slippery, obviously a fall risk.
We all know that feeling.
But there's an upper limit. If the friction is too high, maybe around 1.0, it gets dangerous because of what they call rotational moments.
In plain English.
It means the shoe sticks too well. When we walk, our foot needs to pivot just a tiny bit. If your ankle is rigid and the shoe is glued to the floor with high friction,
That twisting force goes up your leg.
right up to the knee, or when you're swinging your leg forward, if you don't clear the ground perfectly, a sticky shoe catches instantly, and that's a trip hazard.
So you need that sweet spot. Sticky enough not to slip, but slick enough not to trip.
Exactly. The sources say between 0.6 and 0.8.
Okay, let's pivot to a specific piece of hardware that seems to present its own set of challenges, the Arizona brace.
The gold standard for PTTD,
PTTD.
posterior tibial tendon dysfunction. It's when the tendon that holds up your arch starts to fail. The foot collapses inward. It can be very painful.
And the Arizona brace is this custom-molded leather and plastic gauntlet.
Right, it's not a simple insert. It basically locks the ankle and foot together to hold that arch up.
And it is huge.
It is substantial. It basically turns your foot into a boot before you even put a shoe on.
The notes mention different stages of PTTD. Does the shoe change depending on how bad it is?
It does. In the early stages, you're just trying to hold the arch up. But by stage 3, the foot is rigid.
Fixed.
Fixed. At that point, the shoe needs deep volume and soft lining. By stage 4, the ankle is involved. And if the brace locks the ankle completely, the shoe must have a rocker bottom sole.
Because the foot can't bend, so the shoe has to roll for you.
Exactly. Without that rocker sole, you're just slapping your foot down like a flipper.
The sources mentioned a very practical detail I loved. Because of the bulk, you need a shoe with a bellows tongue.
Yes, this is crucial. A standard sneaker tongue is just attached at the bottom. But on these specialized shoes, the tongue opens way, way up.
Like a convertible top.
It has to. Because you're sliding this big L-shaped medical device in. You need that clearance to get the heel seated properly.
Okay, let's get into some day-to-day stuff. Laces versus Velcro. I feel like Velcro gets a bad rap.
It does, but for AFO users, the science is pretty pro-Velcro. Laces are great for a custom fit, but they require a lot of hand dexterity.
Which a lot of patients might not have.
Exactly. Plus, standard laces are often too short anyway.
Right. You end up with this tiny little knot.
But Velcro or hook and loop handles, swelling much better.
Edema.
Yep. Your foot might be one size in the morning and bigger by evening. Velcro is a quick, one-handed micro-adjustment.
The sources also mentioned some cool modern tech like the BOA system.
The BOA reel, yeah.
Yeah.
The dial you see on snowboard boots.
Right.
It's excellent because it gives consistent tension. And zippers rear entry or side entry zippers are a game changer for the Arizona brace. You just zip the shoe around it.
Okay, here is a tip that feels absolutely crucial. The measurement protocol. The source basically says, never measure the bare foot.
This is where so many people go wrong. They order their size. I'm a size 9. But that's your anatomical size.
Not your AFO plus sock size.
Right. You are functionally 2 or 3 sizes larger and wider. You have to measure with the brace on.
And timing matters too?
Late afternoon, swelling is at its peak. If you measure in the morning, the shoes will be too tight by dinner.
And speaking of socks, the microenvironment inside a brace sounds humid.
It's tropical rainforest in there. Plastic and leather don't breathe. High-quality socks are mandatory as a friction buffer.
To prevent rubbing and skin breakdown.
And they mention copper-infused or moisture-wicking socks specifically to prevent fungal growth and keep the skin dry. It's not just comfort, it's infection prevention.
Okay, we have to address the elephant in the room. Style versus stigma.
This is huge. The psychological aspect is just as important as the biomechanics.
The sources explicitly mention that ugly orthopedic shoes lead to social withdrawal, especially in teens.
It's about dignity. 20 years ago, the therapeutic footwear catalog was bleak. Beige, boxy, Velcro straps that just screamed, patient!
But the good news is the market's shifting. The sources list some very mainstream, cool options.
They do. They mention stability trainers like the New Balance 999 DV6 or the Brooks Adrenaline.
Which are trendy shoes. I see people wearing those for fashion. It's that whole dad shoe trend.
Exactly. And because chunky sneakers are in style, an AFO user can wear one and look completely contemporary. They don't stick out.
And hiking boots, too. That makes perfect sense.
Brands like Keen or Merrell, they're naturally wide, deep, and stiff. A hiking boot is basically a high-performance orthopedic shoe disguised as outdoor gear.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The takeaway is that the brace is only half the battle.
Stop thinking of the shoe as an accessory. It is a tuning instrument. The source material is clear. The correct pairing restores pain-free mobility.
And improves quality of life for 90% of Arizona brace users.
A staggering success rate, but it relies on that interface being correct.
And looking forward, the future seems pretty bright. The sources touched on 3D printing.
Yes. The ability to scan a foot and brace together and then print a shoe that fits that exact geometry. We're moving toward discrete medical footwear.
A shoe that looks sleek but has all the hidden volume you need.
That's the dream.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. The next time you're people watching, look at the shoes walking past you. Don't just look at the brand. Look at the heel drop. Look at the toe box shape.
Those aren't just style choices. They are levers and fulcrums. They are the hidden mechanics that dictate how we all move. And for someone with an AFO, that tiny lever is the difference between sitting on the sidelines.
And walking confidently into the room. And on that note, thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Take care.